Alright, another response video to Luddite Returns. He's claiming anti-natalism is futile, which is kind of a dumb concept to argue. So there's two elements to futility, let's say, right? The one element is there has to be, for something to be futile, it has to be nothing that needs fixing. So it's like you make a machine that doesn't fix anything. Like most inventions solve a problem. And so that's why the invention exists. It's because it solves some sort of problem, some sort of circumstance. It makes it more efficient, makes it happen better, makes something better. Something better, that might be a way to put it, right? It improves how something functions or how efficiently you can accomplish something. So it's fixing something that already exists as a good but needs improvement, or it fixes something that's fundamentally bad, like a vaccine for a disease. And then there's things that are things that we speculate to be inventions or things that somehow are valuable in and of themselves. They are the wheel. The wheel is not even a good example, because again, that was fixing a problem, like how do I move stuff from here to there more efficiently, including people or myself. So again, that was a solve a problem thing. So theoretically, this other thing would be something that's just by itself good. And perhaps that's difficult to come up with something that would fit in that description, because you would find some way to say that it's really solving a problem, and that it's there has to be a problem first, and it's a solution to the problem. And so, in this conversation, that's sort of the anti-natalist argument. At least it's my argument, is that what we do in life is basically solve the problem of being alive. Solve the problem of death, which is the problem of being alive. Solve the problem of dying, which is a problem created by living. These are all problems created by existence, not problems that existed already that we're solving. And so that changes, that makes us futile. So obviously, in arguing anti-natalism, like arguing vegetarianism, it's not possible for that to be futile, because the value is in the obvious argument that's being made, is that there's a sufficiency in it. Okay, I mean, basically at its roots, the vegetarian argument is an efficiency argument. It's saying, look, you can still glean your satisfaction, just do it a different way. Okay, eat potato chips that look like hippopotamuses. Eat animal crackers. Just don't eat animals. And it's a good deal because the environment is better, less animals suffer. It's just all win. Less fuel is used, less harm is done to both people and animals. So yeah, if you can find your gratification without taking it from sentient organisms, then that's probably what you should do, and that's all it is. It's just a statement saying this invention of vegetarianism is a very good invention if you can learn how to use it. Anti-natalism is a similar argument. Here's a solution to a problem. The solution to the problem is that these living organisms come into the world in a sloppy manner. They have a huge bag of need they need to fill in their life. Some of them extremely extravagant in terms of how many slaves they own and how much they demand how much sacrifice in terms of suffering they demand for their fur coat, or for the this, or for the that, to gain their satisfaction. They extract it from the welfare of a large number of feeling, sentient, welfare, needful organisms, and that this easy solution is just to quit making these things. They don't produce anything of real value. They just clean up a mess they make, and then say, I'm really cool because I cleaned up the mess I made. So yeah, it'd be good to just solve that problem. Solve the problem of creating need that doesn't need to exist. And it's just fundamentally sensible to not make messes, to stop messes from being made. It's the easiest way to clean up a lot of messes is to prevent them from being made. So it just isn't possible for it to be futile. I mean, really, preventing suffering is the antithesis of futile. Unnecessary suffering.
Axiological nihilism, or metacontextual futility, is meaningful only relative to a notion of metacontextual meaningfulness.
Right, so I guess he just said you can't be futile if there's no such thing as meaning. So these are these nihilist people. They're just going to, Nietzscheans, they're going to just blow up the very concept of value and say it doesn't exist, and therefore futility is irrelevant because in a valueless world there's no reason to have value-rich words. And but their own argumentation is a demonstration that they don't even believe their own philosophy. Because if they did, why would they even bother making an argument for a preferential case that implies value? So it doesn't make any sense. Why are you an advocate for something if you're arguing there's fundamentally no difference? You just can't do that. Obviously you think there is a value difference.
But as this notion is itself at best vague and at worst meaningless.
Well, I don't know. Vague? What is vague about the idea of there being no disease to cure? You being the cure for a disease that doesn't exist. That's the definition of futility, right? You're an upside-down Band-Aid. You're a square wheel. You're not functioning as a useful, efficient thing. I mean, there is a subtlety, admittedly. If in a world where you acknowledge the existence of value, the line between just being futile and being destructive is perhaps vague, because it's a rare commodity that's just futile. Usually, as soon as you go into the area, the realm of potential futility, you're in the realm of likely negative, unproductive consequence. You're likely running a deficit.
Subsumedly, the notion of metacontextual futility, so often propagated by anti-natalists, may prove evaluatively nonsensical.
Yeah, may prove by, it's just such a, may. It may if you can find an argument written on a, go through all the Bazooka Joe comics ever written and see if you can find a brilliant line from him to save the day. Because you obviously don't have anything else. You don't have anything like rational or logical. So all you're going to come up with is what? Some kind of super joke? But you're not going to come up with an argument. The universe is not a sentient thing. It doesn't need anything. And that's a real problem. It's a problem to be thinking you're a gift in a world that has no need for gifts, that you can't shop for, that doesn't have a shoe size or a waistline. It doesn't have a favorite food. It doesn't have a favorite activity. There's absolutely nothing. You can't buy it a tennis racket. You can't make it one. You can't be one. You just can't be anything but a mess maker.
To express this another way, consider the proposition life is futile. This attributes a kind of property, i.e. futility, to life sum total, or life simpliciter, but...
Yeah, sum total or simpliciter, that's right. At its core, we already see it, right? Replication for the sake of replication. We know its origin. Unintelligent design, replication for the sake of replication, precious commodities controlled by crude forces. There's nothing in the recipe that looks very conducive to something productive. It looks pretty conducive to something futile and destructive. And so the writing is sort of on the wall just from the ingredients in the recipe. And then let's look at the practical, factual result, the end product. And we can see that even when the thing has high intelligence and it's not living in a tooth and claw, brutal, natural world where, you can, where 10,000 little baby octopuses, with fully functional bodies and brains, will be wiped out in the first moments of existence. So even though we're not even living in that mess, in that horror house anymore, even though we've extracted ourselves, look at us, look at what we do, look what the average human does with their intelligence. The scheming, the debauchery, the cheapness of their existence. And then we, just as icing on the cake, we drone in world war, exploit, molest. Come on.
Clearly this is not applicable within the bounds of life.
Well, clearly it's not applicable within the bounds of life. Again, what is that? That doesn't even say anything. Living does not make us unintelligent, does not make us not capable of recognizing a bastard origin. We have a bastard origin. Alright? We're not designed well. We're not meticulously, intricately constructed. We were built to be gladiators in a insipidly stupid war for the silly honor of saying, I smited them. I mean, come on.
As chains of justification come to an end within those states of affairs, experientially, intrinsically meaningful.
Whatever that means. You don't need to justify something intrinsically meaningful. That sounds like a God theory to me. You're saying it's God's territory. I'm not allowed to judge the magical, special, super cool, lifey, poof. Well, yeah, I am. And I think I have, sensibly and rationally. And you're counter-arguing with convoluted crap, evading the subject, evading your responsibility to do the right thing, and logically argue, not to resort to pomposis verbiosis.
Even if futility inheres transcendentally. And this is the problematic nature of what anti-natalists proffer, as if unproblematic. That is, as transcendental meaningfulness is without clear ontological reference, so too is metacontextual futility.
Yeah, whatever. So he keep arguing that somehow life isn't a mechanism that is as evaluatable as any other mechanism, because somehow it's separate. It's not, we didn't make it so we can't judge it, or it doesn't function to, as all the other things we have made absolutely do necessarily have to function. Life somehow doesn't have to. It doesn't have to have fuel economy, because somehow it's above the law. Why? God says so? I mean, there really isn't a rational question to the why, right? There's no reason not to judge it like everything else. And your only reason that we shouldn't judge it is because you know it's going to fail. It's the ugliest contestant in the contest. It's going to lose.
In other words, the anti-natalist claim doesn't even get off the ground, as it were, but let's suppose that it does. That is...
Well, it's just stupid to say it doesn't do, but it's supposed, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is just such... What is that? You didn't demonstrate anything not off the ground. It certainly gets off the ground to acknowledge the fact that crude forces created us, and that we're not much more than... a bunch of stalagmites. Let's say stalagmites acquired consciousness, and they just sat around, right? They couldn't move but they could talk all day long. And they just talked about how cool stalagmites are. I mean, you know, you would say, does the universe really need talking stalagmites, talking about how cool stalagmites are? Is that really so fucking special and so fucking cool? Would you sacrifice, like, what? What would you sacrifice for it? What would you throw into a volcano, you know, to have talking stalagmites?
Let's suppose we know what we're talking about here.
Well, suppose we know what we're talking about. Like, we haven't done the game. We haven't looked at matter. We haven't got the periodic table. We understand that matter has properties. Compounds have, you know, complex the properties that come into the elements. The elements have properties. When you mix the elements together, that acquires new properties. And some of these properties are rather funky. And when you get a really little complex bunch of chemistry thrown together, a few compounds, smash them together, obviously, on Earth, at least one time in the history of the universe, it replicated itself in a way where it could do it by reading a blueprint. It replicated a blueprint, and in doing so, created the opportunity for natural selection to force matter to compete with itself. Varieties of itself, and to create a game of modification where the matter modifies to the competition. Yeah, we can't do that.
Lamentation, relative to the absence of transcendental meaning, presupposes that the presence of such would be transevaluatively preferable. Anti-natalists universally leave this presupposition unexplored.
What presupposition? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't get all that crap, that transcendental bullshit and all this extra gooey gobby. I mean, whatever. I'm sorry you can't speak English. I'm sorry you're too big a pussy to speak real language. But yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm certainly not afraid to explore whatever little wienery dicky thing you're talking about here. But yeah, I can't do it if you can't put it in English, fuckhead. I mean, what is that? What's your argument? What are we afraid of? What are we not looking at? You have an ooey gooey love feeling or something, and you're telling me that makes all the difference? I love stalagmites, therefore stalagmites are cool. Talking stalagmites, therefore it's okay if we sacrifice a few million human beings and throw them in the volcano? Fuck you.
For perhaps even more existentially horrifying than the absence of transcendental meaning would be its presence.
Transcendental meaning. So who's arguing that it has to be a transcendental meaning? The argument is that it's just part of the function of the universe, that this serviceability doesn't exist, that you can't be a chauffeur, you can't be a car, you can't be something useful, and that's just a functional limitation. So anything that you are, if you're going to perceive yourself as having it, having value, you're going to have to create it as a notion, because it won't be something that'll actually exist in your function. So you're just basically going to be stuck with lying to yourself. And that doesn't even come at the cost of saying that I'm closing any door to the idea that you might be able to create something that's just so damn fucking perfect in some way that it isn't futile. But it's really hard, again, to construct anything that can be of any real value beyond the fact that you value it as a notion. But it can't have any value in the sense that if there's no sentience to please, there's nothing, you can't construct anything to satisfy. Yet it's just a physical limitation. If there isn't something hungry, you can't make a meal.
as the absurd is the condition of possibility of authenticity.
The absurd is the possibility of authenticity. The absurd is the possibility of authenticity. So what? It's absurd to not even to evaluate function. It's absurd to sit there and critique function. Because why? Oh, because you're already conceding that it can't possibly have function. Is that why it's absurd? Because you know the fact is you're conceding the point that it can't possibly scratch an itch, because you know the itch doesn't exist. So it's automatically going to have no capacity to have any true positive value outside of the fixing what it breaks by existing. So again, you're back to the fundamental argument, which is we're just creating a cure for the disease, and we're the disease. I mean, it's just such bullshit.
I'm trying to make here is actually expressed in the title of the video. And you will see how quickly anti-natalists will make exceptions in their own case.
Exceptions to what? Again, what we have argued is that life has plenty of potential to create negative. All right? What we're saying is it has no potential to create positive. That's its futility. It has no potential to create a true positive. That makes it futile at best. But there's plenty of potential to clean up the negative. So obviously, anti-natalism can't be futile on that purpose alone, on fixing the negative. Again, the round wheel was not futile. It wasn't a futile invention. And why wasn't it futile? Oh, that's right, because it took away burden. It took away harm. That's what made it valuable. It didn't do something intrinsically positive in any sense beyond the fact that it took away burden. It took away harm. It took away negative circumstances. It alleviated them. And that's its value. And that's where everything has to get its value from. So quite obviously that creates a dilemma for us, as we are problem makers. And we're only solving problems that we are making. It's like arresting it's like committing crimes and then arresting ourselves for the crime. We're back to firemen starting fires and then putting them out and saying, "Aren't I great?" That doesn't make you great. You can't be a real hero that way. You can only be a fucking shithead that way. Yeah, alright. Pretentious. Pompous, pretentious, elitist, jibber jabber. Monstrous.